So hi guys, we are going to discuss about the basic concepts in Pega. So whenever we're learning this PPM tool, we need to understand some basic terminology and how we can use this tool. It's completely UI based tool that we can see it how we can use this tool and what are the terminology and what we need to look at understanding in the basic level. So let so when we need to look at rule. So what is a rule here? In Pega, we calling everything as a rule. Rule is a nothing but it's just like some code that we are implementing for to take some action. Just like the rules are building blocks of the applications. Like you see, this is the rules like we use it to build front end, like using that designing the form, or I create a rule there I want to get the data from the database, or I need to validate some logic, validate the data. So this is all things we calling as a rule, and the rules we are used to maintain with one specific versions, and there we calling as a rule set. The rule set it's a container of the rules. So that's what we'll discuss in later. And now we need to understand what is the rule here, right? And the rule is a building block. I mean the blocks of your application, and it's nothing but some code. In programming way, there we calling the writing the code, and the code we are used to implement for some logic. And here the rules we are nothing but that's the same way we are implementing the logic, but technically we are calling rule in Pega. And the rule type, the rule type is let me see, like I'm designing that rule, I'm implementing the code for front end or designing the form. The rule type we calling as a section, right? And the section which inherit that designing that form, that functionalities from Pega application. Okay. And we'll see that part. That's we need to understand uh, what is the rule type. So the rule type we use it to implement the code like section activities, like report definition. So whatever the logic we are implement, so that is a type of rule you are going to be implement. And the type of rule which inherit that functionalities, that's whatever we're building the logic, actually it's inherit from the rule hyphen base class. So we'll discuss further what is the okay base classes we have it and how does it work. And the rule is nothing but we defining every rule, the whatever the rule we are using to implement. Suppose I'm designing that UI, I'm developing that decision related rules, right? And that's the decision related rules, it's defined, I mean it's have its own functionalities like evaluating the conditions, executing that logic. And so another thing is the activity like implementing that logic and getting the data from the database. And that is where the every rule type have its own behavior. And so this is all these rule types which are derived the class from the rule hyphen base class. So let's see the example here. The rule hyphen obj hyphen the property, it is a class. Actually this is a class. Then I'm creating the property. This property, it's a rule. Inherently it's a behaving like a property because it's using all the functionalities from this class. And this is the object I'm going to use in my work class or in my data class. So whatever its behavior, it will be the same. So every rule type it have its own behavior. That's will we need to look at further. And there will see whenever we develop the application and we develop the code, and that time you must understand about these rules and how we can create the rules and how we can work with this. Okay. And now we need to look at case. So the case is nothing but we use it to represent a business process. I mean the business workflow that you can define it. So let you can take like a claims. The claims you have the multiple, you know, uh, multiple process were involved. Like so, like what kind of example you can take for the claims like health claims, right? So auto claims, so whatever it, this is might be it have some business process it has to proceed. So there we need to define the workflow, So in the workflow there we need to divide as a stages and steps, and each step it's have some functionalities there we have to implement, we need to include, that is the technical we calling as a process, and each stage it have its own process. And we'll look at these understanding these case types. There we have to create application and implementing these case types. At the time there we can look at how we can use these case types in our application, and right, and this is we are trying to understand this theoretical part. Let me see how practically we can implement this case type. And now we need to understand this case type is also a class. Okay, it's also a class, but it's basically inherit, it's behaving like a work class, because its a parent is what, work dash cover dash. So this work dash cover dash is what, which are base classes. So it is inherit those functionalities from the its base classes, and this class, this case is also a class is behaving like a work class. So this is also we calling as a work class. And what is the process? The process, as we discussing before, like case, there we define the workflow. Inside the workflow, there we define the process, and each process it have its own. Uh, I mean, the some business, right? And let's see, this process is nothing but a flow, and in the flow we use it to define the shapes, and each shapes which are connected with the character shape, and each shape which have its own functionalities. There we need to understand like this is the process where it plays a major role whenever the work object is created. I mean the new request is, I mean the new work item is created, and it will be going through this flow, right? And it will go through this each shape of this process, and it will be execute that logic, okay, whatever we want to be implement over there. So this is what there we need to understand how we need to create a process is nothing but a flow, and how we can call another process, right? Sub process there we can call it, and there we have to look at understanding this, how to create a process and how to call another process as well. And then we need to understand class. So what is the class is actually? Class is a container of rules, right? It's not only the rules, like we can use it to create data instances as well, but is data instance is a different part. It's just like it's used to implement the logic. Suppose there is a class A that I can implement a lot of code inside the class A. There, the class A, whatever I have implemented, the methods and variables, I mean the properties, that I can use it in the another class as well, right? So the same way here in Pega, we are not writing the code, but we need to understand actually this terminologies, how we have to use in the class. So there, without writing the code, but we can create a rule in that class. It's a part of the code in the class. So it's just like, so we can create like properties, sections, flow actions, data transforms, and many other rules, right? So like we can log into the our application, and there you can say right click on the class there, which you can see which are categorized rules. There you can select the rule type that you're going to create, and now the many rules applies to, okay, uh, so just like specific classes, let you see this potentially to subclass of the class. Like suppose I create a class A, and there is a class B is there. It's just like in class B I define the properties, and that properties I'm going to use in the class A, right? So for the time that I need to create a page, so that a page I can access the class B properties or like that. And class can be abstract or concrete. So the class can be abstract or concrete, like, so there are the two types of classes in Pega, right? Which are abstract and concrete class. An abstract class is only a container. I mean, there we are using for making more reusability, right? So we cannot create an instance to be stored in the database using the abstract classes, but these abstract classes can be extended by the concrete classes. That you can observe our base classes in the Pega. There you see rule hyphen, work hyphen, data hyphen, all these base classes which are extended by the concrete classes, and that concrete classes that we can use it in our applications. So as we have seen this example here as a property. I think that the property, yeah, here you see. So there you see rule hyphen obj hyphen property. What does that mean is actually? So this is the one base class, and this is the one base class, and this is a concrete class. So this is the combination. I mean, it is create one instance. That instance I am using in my application. So that I can create a multiple properties, right? So that's code is defined there, and that instances that I can use it in my application where I want to be. So that is a purpose that you can see abstract classes and concrete classes we are using, right? And the concrete classes use it to create an instance. That instance we use to store it in the database, right? Um, so like this. And now, what is the rule solution? This rule solution, suppose I develop the code, right? And what is the code it most suitable to execute at runtime, right? Suppose fetch data from database. So suppose the code, the rule name I'm talking about, fetch data from the database, or fetch customer data, whatever we can call it. So uh, whenever I'm creating the same rule in the multiple classes, so as for the runtime execution, it takes what is the most suitable to execute at runtime. So this is the rule resolution algorithm. It will be check the user access, I mean that access level to execute that rule, and then it will follow some steps to execute that rule, right? Further, we'll see more detail about this rule resolution, and how this rule resolution where it will be executed and what are the steps, okay, and how we need to understand that rule availability as well, right? How the rule availability, like available, not available, withdrawn, okay. So there we need to understand how we can use this resolution, and this is where it is mainly used by the Pega internally, but we need to understand how it is working, right? And this specially rule solutions only work for the rules, not for the data. So data, what you can say data, so the data you can say about like operator, okay, like access groups, okay, work group, so whatever, which are what, which are, it's just a data, it's not belongs to any particular version. So it's just have data which is specifically, it's or belongs to some rule set but not the version. So there you can see. So this is what we need to understand how this rule solution is working, right? And what are the inheritance in Pega? The inheritance in Pega, which are two types of inheritance, which we calling as a pattern and direct inheritance. So pattern inheritance is nothing but what is the current class hierarchy, and it will be check all the classes in the current class hierarchy. It's a part of calling what, rule solution algorithm. So it will be initiate at designing time. It will be checked. Okay, it will be okay, we can call it at runtime also. It will be checked by this rule solution algorithm. And this it will be checked in the current class hierarchy. If it is not find the rule in the current class, it will be checked what is the parent, right? The direct means what is the parent. Now it will be control goes to the parent class and checking in that parent class. So finally it will be checked until it go to the header base class. So the header base class is the final class in the paper. So that is where we need to look at how the inheritance, I mean how the inheritance is working, right? What are those? Pattern inheritance and direct inheritance. And now there we have to understand here, this picture is so lengthy, it's okay, we cannot yet look at, but here we need to understand this is the base classes, I mean base Pega base product, and there you see at the base class, and there we have like okay, work classes, right? So work type and data type, and there are many base classes. It's nothing but some library files which can reuse in our application. I mean whatever the work classes or data class, the behavior comes from it's this base classes only. So that is what we need to look at to understand the inheritance, how the class hierarchy, it helped to find the rule, and it helped to create a work object, and it helped to store and retrieve the data and calling that lot of functionalities. Okay, that is where we need to look at. And here Pega it supports multi-layer application, right? And so this is where we need to understand what is the layers of your application. The layers are of application is just like the base layer. On top of that, there is one reusable layer. On top of that, multiple reusable or implementation layers are there, right? So we need to look at designing application designing level. There we need to understand what is that hierarchy of your application, right? I mean the frame different layers of your applications. So this is the base application, and there you see this is the one framework layer. On top of that, there is one framework layer, right? So on top of that, there we have the implementation layer. This is the implementation layer. This is the organization layer. This is the one division layer. This is the implementation layer. I mean the combining of these things, right? And this is what which are pointing to this base application, I mean the Pega base product, right? And this is what direct inheritance, and it is pointing to there. You see this. This is the implementation layer, which have the hierarchy. I mean relation what pattern and direct inheritance, right? And this is the implementation layer, which direct to what this framework layer, which direct to here this framework layer, and which direct inheritance to this Pega based product. But within this application, it follows what pattern inheritance, right? So this is within the hierarchy of this class only. This is the class hierarchy only. So that is what it's calling what pattern inheritance. Okay, and now you see this is the framework, and this is the one more framework which are have the pattern inheritance with the organization layer. Organization is the same. Okay, organization is the same for your framework layer and your implementation layer as well. And there we need to understand the rule set in Pega. The rule set, it's a container of the rules. So what we are talking about the rules, the rule is nothing but a code. The code we use it to develop in our application. So how does it maintain in Pega? So it's just like the version control. Like in every sprint there we use it to deploy the code, right? So whatever the code, you need to understand how it is maintained. So the rule set, whatever the rule we are used to deploy, it's a part of the rule set, and rule set is maintain that rules with this specific version, right? The version you see major and minor and patch version, like okay, 010101 like that. And so whenever we are deploying that, every deployment we increase that patch version, right? So your code is there in the old version and new code is there in the new version. So this is how we use it to maintain the rules in our application, right? And so there you can see here like access control, migration, and versioning. So there we have to understand that how we give the access control to that operator, and how we can give use to okay migration to the okay skimming, like okay major version increasing, minor version increasing, and they're also versioning here, rule versioning, right? And this is the rule set is not comparing to the class. It's not a simple class. It's more than a class. In the rule set there are many classes it will be covered, right? There is a one rule set. It will maintain the contain the number of rules which are belongs to the multiple classes. So it is okay bigger part of, I mean, more than the class. And this is rule set name and rule set version, and there we have to look at the rule set and rule set version. So this is what major and minor and patch versions, right? So these are the versions. There we have it. So this is where we use it to deploy, and every time and before that we need to lock it. So you see this example, like I'm there. We need to understand, like suppose I'm developing the code. There my code won't develop. Suppose I'm developing my code for the US region, for suppose. So it's only as good the code whatever I customize it for the US specific region, that I maintain my code into the that particular rule sets. So whenever I'm developing enterprise applications, there I want to expand to the entire world with the different regions, and there I need to maintain the code with the which are specific rules as well, right? The rules which are belongs to the particular region, and that code we are giving that access to that operator. That code only will execute to their operator. So this is also we are used to control. I mean, we are used to control and restricting that rule execution for that each operator. So that is one of the okay uh, purpose we are using in the real time as well. And what are the components in Pega Design Studio? Like, so whenever we want to develop the application, obviously there we have to look at Design Studio, right? In Design Studio, there we have like a header part, an explorer area, and work area, and developer toolbar. So here, the header part, there we have like there are the wizards, okay, and like we have the create menu, like a number of creating the tools. There we have the options to create, and the application menu and search bar, and there we can see it. And the explorer area, there we can open the classes and creating the case type and data types. We can see there, and the work area there we are used to implement whatever things that we can expand it here in this explore area. And developer toolbar is just like we are used to uh, tools. There we have the number of tools like clipboard, tracer, live UI. There we use it to debug it. So entire the Pega there we are used to develop, and we are used to debug, and we are used to testing as well. The testing is a different thing, okay, but testing also be implemented as part of the Pega only, right? And so we can develop the front end, back end, and everything, okay. So without writing the code, and how we can access this Designer Studio, like there we have to if it in the real time, there will get the URL, okay, which is already set up in that real time, like the cloud URL we get it. And there you have to log in with your operator ID and password. And there you can go to the Designer Studio, and there you can start developing that your application, right? So this is where you have to look at before understanding the Pega. So what is the common terminology there we have to look at, right? And this is the tool where okay, we have to log in as the administrator, the Red Pega. So now click on the login. So now we log into the Pega option, and this is the Pega default portal, right? So this is the header area, and this is the explorer area, and this is the footer. You see this number of tools which are available here, right? And here you see this is you can search your rules, and you can create the rules from here, which are categorized. You see here like addition, data model, integration related, and all. And this is your application menu. You can create your own application, okay. And this is your explorer area. There you can okay explore, I mean create the rules, and open the classes, data types, and case types. The leaf symbol you see is it's nothing but a class, and inside the class what are the rules which are implemented, which are categorized. Suppose you created data, I mean they created a property which is belongs to the data model, and inside the data model there are other rule types included, and the one of the rule is a property. And expand the property, there are many other properties which are created in this property category. I mean this property type of rules were created, and this is the categorized in the data model. So this is where if you see all the classes which are have the same categories. So it's just like you can create the rules, the what type of rule that you want to be create, and what type of logic that you want to be implement, right? And this is where we need to understand here. And this is the footer area, there we have to look at. So this is agile workbench. There you can see the status of your stories and bugs. You can raise the bugs from here. It's just like agile workbench, like Jira tools that we can integrate with our Pega application. And here you see the tracer, clipboard, live UI. So there we have the tools we use it to debug it. So there we have to understand how to debug, and how to implement okay I mean the application. There we have to identify the issue, And see, the small thing there you have to understand, like, so whenever we develop the code, right? Whenever you develop the code, if you got any issues in middle, how would you identify it, right? So when you got an issue, it's not displaying the data, right? So what is the major issues you do you think it? So first thing, you need to understanding these terminologies. I mean, how to check that clipboard, the memory which is allocated. I mean, loaded for that. Okay, data. I mean, whatever the UI, right? Whatever UI we use to display the data, whether I can see in the backend, there is a memory area. It will be generated. It will be. I can see in the clipboard, and there is a tracer I can debug where the from where that data is loaded. So there I can go ahead and I can check in the tracer. I can trace it by running that code that I can identify. So when the data is okay, data is loaded, that I can check it. And the live UI there I use it to debug the UI, inspecting that UI. So that is the purpose we use it. This is how the tool there we need to understand. So completely it's just navigation based, and all these navigations which are very easier to understand. But we need to focus understanding this terminology and how we can use these options in Pega.